Welcome to No Tears for Black Girls, a true crime series created, written, and produced by award-winning writer John Reedberg and hosted by Samantha Paul. Per the wishes of the victim's family and to protect the privacy of everyone touched by this tragedy, we have changed all names and locations in the forthcoming narrative. We made this decision to honor their personal lives and maintain the sanctity of their experiences during such difficult times. With this understanding, the story unfolds, influenced by that tragic day, while continuing to protect those most profoundly impacted. Our deepest condolences go out to the family and all involved. The golden California sun shone on 423 Oak Street, where smelling blooming jasmine drifted from the porch of Deon Washington and Marquetta Stockland's new home. Just a month ago, their joyous laughter had echoed through the streets of Spring Valley as they celebrated their wedding. But this morning, as Deon opened the front door, a chilling secret awaited him, one that would twist their happy life into a true crime nightmare. Deon's hand trembled as he unfolded the note left on the welcome mat. The words blurred before his eyes, refusing to register in his mind. This can't be happening. They don't deserve this. Their love had seemed unbreakable. Now cracks splintered through, establishing the life they had built together. He heard Marquetta's footsteps behind him and crumpled the note in his fist. How could he break this to her? She joined him in the doorway, slipping her arm around his waist. "What's that, honey?" Deon swallowed hard. He had a duty to protect her, yet the tragedy consumed them both. The floorboards creaked as he turned to face his wife. Marquetta's smile faded as she searched his ashen face. Their perfect world teetered on a precipice. Once he spoke, it would shatter beyond repair. Spring Valley changed forever. Deon and Marquetta's love story was about to become an infamous chapter in the town's history, one that would haunt the community and draw attending hardened detectives tasked with solving an unthinkable crime. With a shaking voice, Deon forced out the words that would forever alter their lives. "Marquetta, something terrible has happened." At 32, Deon cut an impressive figure, tall, muscular, ruggedly handsome. As a construction worker deeply rooted in his community, he embodied the values instilled by his strict, conservative upbringing. He gained renown, a protector, prioritizing others through diligent, selfless efforts. Marriage held a sacred place in his traditional heart. Marquetta, at 28, was viewed as beautiful. Her entrance commanded attention in every room. Smooth mocha skin glowed against captivating dark eyes, her smile radiating warmth. As a talented hairstylist making waves in the local beauty scene, her confidence and charisma drew people in like moths to a flame. Marquetta possessed an uncanny ability to make everyone in her presence feel uniquely special. Deon never stood a chance against her charms. Their whirlwind courtship caught friends and family off guard with its intensity. Mere months after their first encounter, Marquetta accompanied Deon to every family function, proudly presented as his future bride. She effortlessly charmed his mother, siblings, and inner circle. Deon tumbled headfirst into love, so completely that he proposed within a year. Marquetta's tearful, immediate acceptance felt like a fairy tale come true. To the world, they appeared to be living an enchanted dream. But unseen fractures began to spiderweb beneath their perfect veneer. Fissures that Deon failed to notice, but would soon prove impossible to overlook. Deon stood at the altar, his pulse pounding as Marquetta glided down the aisle in a shimmering white gown. She radiated beauty, viewed perfection. Deon marveled at his fortune at finding such a loving partner. But even on their wedding day, subtle hints of unease crept in. Moments Deon dismissed in the excitement. Marquetta's gaze drifted, her thoughts seemingly elsewhere. As they exchanged vows, Marquetta's hands trembled slightly. Deon attributed it to nerves, but something else lingered there, something off. Their honeymoon was equally grand. Deon pampered Marquetta with 2 weeks of Caribbean paradise. Yet, despite the idyllic surroundings, Marquetta remained slightly distant. She would withdraw into silence, her eyes distant, as if grappling with an inner struggle. When Deon inquired, she dismissed it, citing stress or homesickness. "Don't worry about me, baby." She wrapped her arms around him, her smile melting his heart. But the feeling persisted that Marquetta was hiding something. After the honeymoon, they settled into their cozy Spring Valley home, seeking the privacy of the quiet neighborhood. Deon tended to the yard on weekends while Marquetta focused on her beauty business. Deon's life mirrored his vision: the perfect wife, a comfortable home, a bright future. But as months passed, the unease grew. Marquetta's behavior shifted subtly. She guarded her phone, disappearing for hours without explanation. Late nights at work increased, but when Deon surprised her at the salon, he often found it empty. The excuses mounted: unfamiliar friends, hushed phone calls. Deon's suspicions swelled, but he resisted, believing something was amiss. His love for Marquetta ran deep, and the thought of her keeping secrets twisted his insides. He rationalized it as the stresses of married life. No relationship is perfect, after all. But the tension mounted. Intimacy waned. When it did occur, it felt strained. Marquetta turned away, avoiding Deon's gaze. She often seemed on the verge of confession, her lips parting as if to reveal a truth she couldn't voice. It all unraveled one fateful night. Deon, typically respectful of Marquetta's privacy, let his doubts guide him to an uncharacteristic act. While Marquetta was out, Deon searched her belongings, seeking an explanation for their growing distance. In a hidden box tucked under old clothes, he discovered documents that chilled him to the core. Among the papers was a birth certificate bearing an unfamiliar name: Marquise Stocklin. Digging deeper, Deon found medical records spanning years, detailing Marquetta's transition from male to female. His world ground to a halt. The air seemed to vanish from the room. His hands shook as the revelation's weight crashed down. The woman he had married, vowed to love and cherish, had concealed this from him. Marquetta, born male, had never shared her truth. For Deon, it wasn't just a secret. It was a betrayal of everything he believed in, everything he thought their relationship stood on. Emotions swirled in his mind: anger, confusion, heartbreak. How could she have hidden something so profound? The person he thought he knew now felt like a stranger. This discovery would prove the first domino in a chain of events leading to unimaginable horror. What Deon couldn't foresee was how his feelings of betrayal and anger would spiral into something far darker, violent, and deadly. Deon sat stunned, staring at the documents strewn across the bed. Questions raced through his mind, but no answers emerged. How long had Marquetta concealed this? How could she have deceived him about something so fundamental? For hours, Deon remained alone in the house, the clocks ticking, amplifying his growing rage and sense of betrayal. When Marquetta finally returned that evening, she froze in the doorway at the sight of Deon sitting on the bed, her most intimate secret exposed. The color drained from her face. Her hand tightened on the doorknob as if preparing to flee. "You lied to me." Deon's whisper trembled with rage. He stood slowly, clutching the papers like evidence of a crime. "Who are you, Marquetta?" "No, what are you?" Marquetta's heart sank as reality hit her. She had always known this day might come, when her past would catch up, but she never imagined it happening like this. She had hoped to tell Deon on her terms, but the fear of losing him kept her silent too long. "Deon, please! I was going to tell you. I swear I was, but I didn't know how. I love you. This doesn't change who I am, who we are." She stepped cautiously toward him, eyes brimming with tears. but her words only fueled the fire inside Deon. "Doesn't change who you are? You've been lying to me this whole time, Marquetta." His voice grew louder, more frantic. "You tricked me into marrying you. Do you know what you've done? I gave you everything, my love, my loyalty, my life, and this whole time you've been lying about the most basic thing, who you really are." Marquetta's tears streamed down her face, but she held her ground, desperate to make him understand. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to lose you, Deon. You mean everything to me. I thought if you knew, you wouldn't love me anymore." Deon's face twisted in fury. "You thought right." He spat the words with venom, his anger spiraling out of control. His mind whirled with betrayal, disgust, and confusion. The room seemed to close in on him. His once beloved wife was now a stranger. The argument intensified with each passing minute. Deon's anger crackled like a live wire, unpredictable and volatile, while Marquetta found herself trapped between trying to explain and fearing what Deon might do next. She had never seen him so out of control, so full of hate. As Deon yelled, pacing the room, Marquetta's heart pounded. She could see the rage building inside him, and it terrified her. "Deon, please, just calm down. We can talk about this. I'll answer any questions you have. Just, please, don't do anything rash." But Deon wasn't hearing her anymore. In his mind, everything he had built with her had been a lie, and he couldn't think straight. All he saw was red. His hands clenched into fists. His breath quickened. "Calm down," he barked. "You've been lying to me for years and you want me to just calm down?" Deon entered the garage in a blind rage and spotted a hammer. Without hesitation, he grabbed it, returning to the house with a chilling determination. As Marquetta stood frozen in the bedroom, her eyes wide with fear, Deon approached with the hammer in hand. Without warning, he swung the hammer down with brutal force. Marquetta screamed, trying to shield herself. But Deon was relentless. Blow after blow, he struck her with a terrifying fury. Her cries for mercy were drowned out by his blind rage. The walls of their home soon splattered with blood as Deon continued the savage assault. The brutality of the attack was so severe that detectives later described it as one of the bloodiest crime scenes they had ever encountered. But Deon didn't stop there. He dragged Marquetta's lifeless body into the bathroom. His mind spiraled deeper into madness as he grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer. The rage had taken full control now, any sense of humanity gone. He mutilated her body, slashing and cutting with reckless abandon, disfiguring her beyond recognition. By the time the authorities arrived, Marquetta's body was barely identifiable, her face and body marred by Deon's unhinged brutality. When the police broke through the door, they encountered a nightmare. Deon sat in the middle of the room, covered in blood, staring at the scene he had created. His expression is one of haunting disbelief and madness, as though he couldn't comprehend the horror he had just unleashed. In a daze, Deon grabbed his phone. His hands shook as he dialed 911, the weight of what he had done settling in. "I killed her," he whispered when the operator answered. His voice was hollow, devoid of emotion. The operator tried to keep him on the line, asking for details, but Deon could hardly form a coherent thought. His life, he knew, ended. When the police arrived, they found Deon sitting on the floor beside Marquetta's lifeless, mutilated body, his face stained with tears, his hands covered in her blood. The man who had once been a proud, hard-working husband was no more. He was now a broken shell, consumed by the weight of his actions. The news of Marquetta's death sent shockwaves through their tight-knit Spring Valley community. The media revealed the gruesome details of Marquetta's murder and her secret, sparking a nationwide debate. Some painted Deon as a man betrayed, while others condemned his actions as nothing short of monstrous. But in the end, nothing could bring Marquetta back. What had started as a secret, kept out of fear, had ended in a brutal murder. When the police pulled Deon from the blood-soaked floor of their suburban home, the full gravity of the tragedy became apparent. Neighbors stood outside, horrified whispers floating in the humid Spring Valley air. Blue and red lights bathed the scene in an eerie glow, reflecting off the shattered lives inside. But Deon, still covered in Marquetta's blood, seemed detached from reality. His blank eyes staring ahead, as if he couldn't fully comprehend the nightmare he had created. Veteran detectives responded. However, nothing prepared them for the scene. Marquetta's mutilated body was unrecognizable, lying in a pool of blood in the bathroom. The walls, once pristine, were now a grotesque canvas of violence. Horror filled the house. A home that once symbolized love, now forever stained by death and betrayal. At the police station, Deon sat in an interrogation room. Officers removed his blood-stained clothes and replaced them with a simple white jumpsuit. Yet no matter how much he was washed, the horror of that day lingered on his skin. Hours passed as detectives tried to piece together what had driven him to such unimaginable brutality. "Why did you do it, Deon?" one detective asked, his voice steady but probing. Trying to find a crack in the wall of silence Deon had built around himself. For the first time since his arrest, Deon looked up. His hollow, haunted eyes showed sorrow and disbelief. I didn't know what I was doing," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I loved her, and she lied to me. She wasn't who she said she was." The detective leaned forward, his tone becoming more insistent. "So you decided to beat her to death? And then mutilate her? Do you realize what you've done, Deon?" Deon's gaze dropped again, and he remained silent, as if the weight of his actions was too much to bear. It was clear that something had snapped in him, a fragile mind pushed to the breaking point by mixing betrayal, rage, and his deep-seated insecurities. The brutal crime made headlines across the nation, not only because of its shocking violence, but also because of the controversy surrounding Marquetta's past. The revelation that she had been a transgender woman sent shockwaves through the media, sparking debates on gender identity, secrecy, and the limits of trust in relationships. Some called Deon a monster, a man driven by his insecurities to commit an unspeakable act. Others framed him as a victim of deception. As the trial date approached, Deon's legal team prepared to mount a defense centered on emotional distress, attempting to portray him as a man who had been so betrayed that he lost control in a moment of madness. The defense argued the shock of discovering his wife's secret and the deep emotional toll it took on him had pushed Deon to the brink. The prosecution, however, painted a strange picture. They presented Deon as a cold-blooded killer who murdered his wife in a fit of savage rage. The prosecution scrutinized Marquetta's character, and the tabloids used her private life for their stories. But the court focused on Deon, dissecting and analyzing his actions on that fateful day. Witnesses were called to testify. Friends and neighbors described Deon and Marquetta as a happy couple, though some noted that Deon had always seemed a bit controlling. The courtroom revealed details of the crime scene, photos of the blood-splattered walls, the hammer used in the attack, and Marquetta's mutilated body, and the jury sat in shocked silence. One of the most gut-wrenching moments came when Marquetta's mother took the stand, her face etched with grief. She recounted how much her daughter had loved Deon, how she had always worried about telling him the truth, but hoped that one day he would accept her for who she was. Her words hung in the courtroom like a heavy cloud. She just wanted to be loved, and instead, she was murdered. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments, and emotional pleas from both sides, the jury returned with their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. Deon showed little reaction as the judge read the sentence, his face a blank mask of resignation. He had gone from a newlywed husband with a promising future to a convicted murderer, his life now a shell of its former self. As guards led Deon from the courtroom, he glanced up at the gallery where Marquetta's family sat, their eyes filled with pain and loss. No amount of justice could ever bring her back or undo the damage that had been done. Even after the trial, the case continued to stir debates online, racking up millions of views as documentaries and clips of the trial circulated. Marquetta's friends and supporters mourned the loss of a woman who had wanted to live her truth, but paid the ultimate price for it. They created a viral hashtag Justice for Marquetta movement that called for greater protection and rights for transgender people, bringing attention to the high rates of violence against the trans community, especially Black trans women. The house where Marquetta had been murdered was eventually sold, but neighbors say it never felt the same. The horrific events left a scar on the community, one that would take years to heal. Meanwhile, Deon's family tried to come to terms with the horrifying crime, with some members claiming they never truly knew the man capable of such violence. This case isn't just about murder. It's about how secrets, when buried too deep, can explode in ways no one expects. Marquetta's life was cut short, not because she wasn't brave, but because the world wasn't ready to accept her. Deon's uncontrollable rage is a chilling reminder of the dangers that come when identity, trust, and masculinity collide in tragic ways. This case continues to serve as a grim example of how deeply rooted fears and societal pressures can tear lives apart in the most brutal of ways. Thanks for listening to No Tears for Black Girls. If you enjoyed our show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating, hit that subscribe button, and give us a follow on social media. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue sharing these important stories. Stay blessed, stay loved, and most importantly, stay safe.